So you've got your cholesterol tests in front of you. How do you interpret them? What do you do with them? By the end of this video, you'll begin to see that one of the most important things that you can get from your cholesterol or lipid test is really something that doesn't have so much to do with lipids itself. It has, again, to do with carbohydrate metabolism. But we'll get there in due time. Well, first of all, what is lipid? It's the medical term meaning fats or oils. And here's a quick list of the items that you see here, but let's jump over that. That can drive you crazy if you're not used to it. First of all, let's talk about oils, and let's talk about why we have the cholesterol tests and what lipoproteins are. Again, we've heard what lipo means, or lipid. It means fats or oils. And here's the thing, even if you're Mediterranean, even if you're vegan, you clearly get fats and oils in your diet. Olive oil, avocado, I think any of the diets would say, those are both healthy for you. A lot of people don't like salmon because of various reasons. Most folks consider nuts and flax as healthy. But here's the thing. Think about those oils, and then let's think about the very clear fact. You've heard it a million times. Oil and water don't mix. So when you take these foods, how do you keep from having a fat embolus? Now, what's a fat embolus? First of all, what's an embolus? It's a glob or particle big enough to stop blood flow in an artery. It's floating in the blood, it comes to an area, it lodges, and it stops the flow of blood. That's what happens with a heart attack or stroke. In that case, the embolus is made from a blood clot. Fibrinogen, and fibrin, the other components of a blood clot, plus platelets. And that stops the blood flow to the heart or the brain, whatever tissue is distal to where it happens. Now, fat embolus, or fat embolism, fat emboli in plural, happen as well, and they've killed people. They do routinely. Not as often as heart attacks and strokes, but they happen a lot. Pardon the ugly, violent image here, but when we have like a car wreck or a fall from a long height and you get these massive fractures, the fat inside the bone marrow tends to get out, and fat embolism in multiple trauma is a big, big deal for orthopedists to have to deal with in the ICU. It also happens after surgery, and that's what killed this lady. She was having some cosmetic surgery, had fat emboli, and they killed her. So now, having heard about fat emboli and how dangerous they can be, just as dangerous as a heart attack and stroke, let's go back to what we had for lunch. How does our body keep the oils? We clearly get more than a teaspoon of oil with a meal, and a teaspoon is enough to kill you if it were formed in one globule as an embolus. Well, here's where proteins come in. There are proteins that the body makes. They form little balls. And the way that they form the ball, the inside of the ball is what we call lipophilic. It likes and it creates an environment for fats and oils. The outside of that ball is what we call hydrophilic. It likes and fits well with water. So we get back to this point about how do we keep from, how does the body solve the problem that oil and water don't mix, yet we have to eat and we have to get calories from fats and oils? We have proteins. They form little balls, and those are called lipoproteins. Now, you may also hear the term, and you will at some point, ApoA, ApoB. Apo means without. So, and that's short term, a short language for apolipoprotein. So, an apolipoprotein is the protein alone in the particle. A lipoprotein is the full particle with the protein and the fat inside it. Now, as we're looking at different lipoproteins, let me just mention that LP little a, as you see here, is very similar to LDL. It's one of the low density lipoprotein families. It's a variation. You see these little hooks that come off of LP little a on the protein itself? Those are called repeat kringles, and they're tiny little repeat sections. When you look at it, it looks sort of like a hook, and it hasn't really been proven, but one of the major thoughts behind the increased inflammatory processes associated with LP little a is this little hook. There's the thought that this hook makes it easier for LP little a to latch onto damaged arterial wall. Now, as I said, there are many, many populations of lipoproteins. They range in size and density. Density meaning how well they float. So for example, LDL is low density lipoprotein. That's what you remember, or you may hear of as bad cholesterol. It tends to float better than HDL, high density lipoprotein, but it doesn't float as well as VLDL, which is very low density lipoproteins. One of the differences in all of these families is that drives both size and density is the amount of cholesterol inside that particle. So the lighter and the larger, the more fat it has. Fat floats more than protein. It's lower density. So now you're beginning to get an idea. Now it's these, the LDL family, that you tend to see in artery walls. There's a perception that plaque is lining the artery walls inside the artery in the lumen where the blood flows. It isn't. Plaque happens when we get burning of that slick intima, and then LDL goes through the damaged intima or endothelium and lodges in the artery wall. So maybe the VLDLs are too big to get through those cracks. HDL, for one reason or another, doesn't go through and lodge. It probably goes through, helps actually clean some of that cholesterol out and comes back out. LDL goes into the artery wall when the intima is damaged and gets stuck there. It also gets oxidized, and that's where you get the term OXLDL, which you may sometimes see on your cholesterol tests. Now, speaking of cholesterol tests, let's go back up here and go through some of these actual items now that we've listed some of them. You have your total numbers. You have triglycerides. Triglycerides are a little bit different from cholesterol in that we've talked about these in other videos. Tri means 3, fatty acids, and glyceride. So there's a glycerin molecule that holds 3 fatty acids together. What is triglycerides? It's fat. It's the fat that you find in love handles and subcutaneous fat. By the way, something you'll remember and we'll talk about it at the very end, triglyceride burning is shut down by insulin. Insulin wants us to be able to decrease our blood sugar level. So it opens up the blood sugar channels in the cell wall, and it stops triglyceride burning. We'll talk about that again at the end of this video. HDL, remember, is the high density lipoprotein. It's got more protein and less fat inside of it. Actually, the HDL is what pulls cholesterol out of the body and brings it back to the liver. LDL is what gets deposited and causes the problem with plaque. So that covers triglycerides, HDL, LDL. We already talked about LP little a. It's just a genetic variations of LDL, which has the kringle repeat sections on it, the little hook. that makes it a little bit more inflammatory. Now, we're going to skip over the total cholesterol HDL ratio and talk about the triglyceride over HDL ratio. I've done a couple of videos on that. And here's the thing. Because cardiovascular inflammation causes heart attack and stroke more so than LDL, we look at triglyceride HDL ratio. And here's why. If you have insulin resistance, let me just back up. Remember I said that at the end of it, we're going to talk about a carbohydrate metabolism problem, not so much a lipid problem. So here's what happens. As I mentioned, insulin, if it's going along too high, it shuts off triglyceride burning. So when you have insulin resistance, your blood sugar tends to creep up. As your blood sugar creeps up, your body has to put out more and more insulin. As it continues to put out more and more insulin, you get into a chronic state of not burning triglycerides. Your triglyceride level goes up. Meanwhile, as that happens, your body burns more HDL in order to try to metabolize and burn up the LDL, the bad cholesterol, the bad fats. So you get in a state with insulin resistance where you have too high triglycerides because you're not burning them, too low at HDL because you're burning them up, trying to metabolize bad cholesterol particles. So that may sound like a lot. In fact, it probably is. But I've got several videos on LDL, HDL, triglyceride over HDL ratios and what those mean. This was just a short video to help describe more of a summary of all those and how to interpret your cholesterol test. If you made it this far, thanks for your interest. If you hit the like button, and for sure if you subscribe or share, the algorithm reads that as a strong message that humans think this is interesting and important information. And the algorithm can share it more than any of us humans. Speaking of sharing, one of the best ways of sharing is on social media. We've got active Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn activities going on right now. We've recently started up things in Pinterest and Twitter, so we'd love to see you there. Check us out. Finally, with over 500 videos, a lot of people are saying, I can't find this video or that video. Our new social media manager, Kim Hermosa, is starting to work on ways to help with that. So join the community. You can click on the links below and you can get a little bit better access. Thank you again for your interest.